My newsmaker this week is a man widely believed to represent an emerging third force of politics in Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, his party's representative has just become the mayor of Srinagar. What are Sajad Lone's future political plans, and is he taking a high-risk political strategy? Joining us now is Mr. Lone. Sajad, ever since I've known you, and it's been almost 2 decades now, I have always known you to take risks. You were someone who represented a separatist sentiment. You first experimented with mainstream politics by fielding proxy candidates in 2002, and since then you've been taking one risk after the other. But to go from separatism to today being an ally of the BJP, some would say, what does Sajad Lone really believe? What is his own ideology?
No, I can tell you that any party which aspires to play a dominant role or a role, in fact, in mainstream would have to ally with a national party. So we have two options there. One is the Congress and one is the BJP. Incidentally, when I joined politics, there was a BJP government at the center. And Vajpayee Saab's government, and I have seen them at that time also. And there was a brush of appreciation for them, the way they handled, at least when I joined in the aftermath of my father's death. And given that Congress had a tried, tested and failed track record for the last 50, 60, irrespective of what their utterances are, I don't see any harm in joining hands with the national party, which we do it for development, we do it for empowerment. And then I don't see any reason. We don't do it for some ideological union with either Congress or the BJP. We do it for development. So I don't see any reason why there should be a mental
block. You're saying
block.
A valley-based party has no choice but to ally with one or the other national party.
They have to.
Why, can you explain, did you choose the BJP, let's say, over the Congress? Of course, the BJP happens to be in power and the natural instinct is to go with the party in power. But are there ideological reasons? Are there other reasons?
Look, I'll tell you something. If everything overlaps, then for someone like me or for any regional party in India, they would merge with a particular party. So there are differences. We have regional aspirations. So that's why you have regional parties all across India. Then you team up with the national party for development. When I talk of Congress, with all said and done, I don't want to sound critical, but their track record in Kashmir has not been really very glorious.
You mean rigged elections in the past?
You have rigged elections, you have whatever there is today. Their dealings with Sheikh Saab, their dealings post-47 till date. If you have to share the blame, they have been ruling for at least 80% of the time since 1947. So
you blame the Congress for the mess in Kashmir?
Well, you tell me, who should I blame if it is not them?
There are many factors.
There could be, apart from the internal factors, Internal,
external.
See, 1987, unfortunately, the media here, which tries to portray a very independent line, how could anybody walk away with a murder like 1987? You had the Congress and the National Conference getting together and actually thrusting gun on what was seemingly for generations
and it
a
is
very peaceful population for at least 500-700 years.
The election which converts Syed Salahuddin from a politician to a militant.
They walked away with murder, and they have the audacity today to lecture about Kashmir. How is it, or for that matter, a national conference? They rigged it together. I don't think any other country with even a modicum of free media would have been able to walk away with such a daylight robbery or a murder in day.
Okay, let's talk about today. Junaid Matoo started mainstream politics with your party, went to the National Conference, came back to the People's Conference, now wins the mayor elections for Srinagar. But 40 votes. With 40 votes out of, I think, 74 or something like that. Now, people are calling this...
No, you're getting it wrong. It's 74 councils.
I know, but I'm just saying that it's a very abysmal
No, you're getting it wrong. We're doing...
no, what am I getting wrong?
When they fought for councillors, at that time voting could have been low.
Yeah.
But when it is the election, when 70 councillors got together, 40 out of 70 and 4 abstentions is a good show.
No, I was making a larger point. So when we look at a Junaid Matoo who becomes the mayor of Srinagar and people say the turnout is very low and this is not genuinely a representative election, what would you say to that?
I would say that a young man called Junaid Matoo, 30 years or 33 years, fresh of a breath of fresh air, is much better compared to a Farooq Saab, who has been in politics for I think, good 50 years. He goes to parliament with 2.5 or 2.8% from Srinagar municipal area, whereas Junaid at least has 4 to 5%. He is accepted, no questions are asked, but a young man, new, will get some freshness. You have a lot of questions about him. Why this selective morality about polling? 1996, we know what the elections were about, and they were given on a platter to National Conference, and that's when they recreated their party. It was nowhere in existence. In 2002, all said and done, they say fair, but even fair is a relative term in Kashmir, facilitated to a great extent, and then you got the PDP. So your two main parties are actually invented or created. They are not there on their own. And now there is a proper election. We know how we fought it. Junaid fights from 3 places. In one place he gets 1,100 votes, where there was 60-70% polling. Other place he gets around 200. Third place he gets around 200. And then you say, no, it lacks representative. If you have to challenge the representative character, then you have to go a long way. It's not only this election.
But do you agree with looking at turnouts as a barometer of anything, whether low or high? One of the mistakes that have been made in Kashmir is that every time there's a high voter turnout, we have argued that normalcy has returned. So the corollary then becomes true. When there's a low voter turnout, people say that, well, normalcy is gone.
You also have to see that there's a high correlation between violence and turnout. So in the absence of violence, if there's a low turnout, then we have to ask questions. But this time the violence was very high. So you also have to take into account the fear factor. You cannot, fear of violence should not be mistaken for consent.
Okay, Sajad, talk a little bit about your next moves, because there is a governor's role in Jammu and Kashmir right now. It was widely believed at one point that the PDP would split and that your party, the PDP, maybe with the support of the BJP, would form the next government. This is after the alliance split between the PDP and the BJP. Is that still a possibility?
No, to be very honest, I have no idea about this thing. As a political party, we are ready for parliament elections, we are ready for assembly elections, and anything which is constitutional. I would never do anything unconstitutional in my life.
But would you be ready to form the government and lead the government if given an opportunity?
I have just 2 MLAs, and as I said, if it has to be a constitutional option, which could include an assembly election. But having said that, I need to add is that a direct rule is always the last option, and it cannot be a long-term solution. And while when I come to Delhi, I get quite surprised because people say that people are happy with governor's rule. I would love to have that barometer which they have to find out.
So you would prefer either a constitutional opportunity for other parties to form the government or elections?
Yes. Because this is, it will alienate. There's an inherent alienation in direct rule.
Between those two options, what would you prefer more?
Any of the two. For me, it's, it hardly matters.
Okay, now, as I said, you've never been afraid to take a risk. But the fact of the matter is that you have spoken about Vajpayee's BJP. And many people would argue that Prime Minister Modi's BJP is not Atal Bihari Vajpayee's BJP. They're 2 different leaders with 2 different visions. Are you so far happy or disappointed with Mr. Modi's Kashmir policy?
I personally am very happy.
Why?
Look,
I'm
a Kashmiri.
Yeah.
Okay. And we had seen a Delhi which was obsessed with the dynasties. The access to the Prime Minister was always restricted to the dynasties. I think Mr. Modi has been able, for us Kashmiris, to present a new Delhi. It's a newer Delhi, wherein anybody can call the PMO and seek an appointment. It's not only me. There are many more people who go and meet the Prime Minister. Or the Home Minister. His doors are open. They go, meet them. I don't think it's more to do, there is any lot of difference between Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Modi. I think it is the dynasties who believe that this prime ministerial office has been opened up to the commoners. And the uncles and aunties in Delhi, they're making this hue and cry that this is different, this is that. What difference?
Who are the uncles and aunties?
I'm saying you know it better than me. It's that all retired officers with all their family links with the two dynasties. You know, for us, it's very harsh. This Sajad, cancel his wife's visa. 4 years, no visa. But for them, if they make any statements, oh, auntie, uncle is not giving me space, it's a very chocolatey boy stuff. And, you know.
Is your reference to the Abdullah dynasty
both
or to the Mufti dynasty?
Look, they've both been pampered. They've both been pampered. Let us not play. As I told you, the press here professes to be very independent. But when it comes to Kashmir in the last 20 years, 30 years, they have always tried to, identify them with something unique, which is not true.
But you've been called a member of a third dynasty, the Lone dynasty.
I'm not a dynast. You are a witness to it more than anybody else. The circumstances in which I was asked to join the party.
No, I witnessed Lone Saab's assassination.
And you did, and you also witnessed the patrons, how they insisted that he should not join politics. He should not be a part of politics. That would have been surrender. And thereafter, you remember the day when I could not go to my father's burial site because Dr. Farooqullah's government would not give me security. 2, then being a part of Hurriyat, they threw me out, kicked me out. Then I fought an election, lost my deposit. Then fielded a candidate in the next parliament election, lost my deposit. And what all these dynasties did, I was a joker, loser, loner, who was not supposed to, I was a butt of jokes. I have made it, when you call me a dynast, it not only belittles my political struggle, but also struggle to live.
So you're actually saying that you are not a dynast because your father was a moderate separatist who was assassinated. When you called out his killers, there was immense pressure on you from the separatists and the mainstream wouldn't accept you. So you were actually nobody's boy.
Unwanted, locally and by the patrons. Unwanted totally. And I used to stay in villages for weeks together, traveling from one, because it was a party, no doubt, in a separatist mold. And in a separatist mold, you don't need a lot of workers. You just need to print a statement and publish it. That's it. But to reorient it to into the mainstream mold, it needed a lot of, it needed 2 defeats in the parliament. And then when I fought assembly elections, it was, will he come second or third? That was the joke. So now when I joined the ministry, I came to Secretariat. People came, met me, MLAs from different parties, political workers, and they did not find in me the joker they were told about, or perhaps less of a joker. And today, the caravan of change has grown. We have many more people, us coming to, and even when you talk of this mayor thing, it was not against Congress, it was against a combine of National Conference, PDP and Congress. The Congress talked to National Conference, Congress talked to PDP. Let them put their hand on their heart and say they were not involved in the confabulations to ensure that our mayoral candidate is defeated.
Today, do you see your future as People's Conference a third force in Kashmir? Or do you see yourself joining hands with one of these 2 dynasts if you have to? No, because you have been part of Mehbooba Mufti's government.
Look, my alliance was with the BJP and they had an alliance with the PDP and I had a wonderful working relationship with her. Let me tell you this thing. As a person, as a human being, I liked working with her. She's a good human being, with whatever she might have done politically. But I liked, I perhaps didn't like the way government was working. We're not going anywhere.
So you're saying you like Mehbooba, the person, not the politician?
Of course, we're all, she has a sense of humor, which unfortunately Umar doesn't.
Umar doesn't and she does.
I don't know him, but I watch him in the assembly. It's a rarity that he smiles. So, but she's, but all said and done, politically, no, nothing, neither of the 2. But I just wanted to say that since I've worked with her, I don't want to say today that, no.
I'm just asking you to look ahead.
Look ahead, we'll go on our own. We are the third emerging force. I would say that... do
you believe the PDP will remain united? What is the sense you have?
I don't... There's going to be a lot of churn across, including us. Maybe some people might go away from us. There's going to, across all the parties, because the level of independence now afforded to Kashmiri legislators or political workers is the highest. It is an invisible spillover of the Modi era, of Mr. Modi, is that they could actually go, because earlier on, there was always this invisible writing on the board. There is either the black dog or the white dog. You know, it was, I can't remember the exact circumstances wherein I think the head of GM Motors said that now the good news is that you can have any color of the car, not only black. So choose any color as long as it is black. So this was...
this is how Kashmir is.
This is how Kashmir is, that it is either black or white, nobody else.
But Sajad, is there a risk attached to allying with the BJP because of this very high-pitched environment right now? We're 6 months away from the national elections. You're certainly hearing a lot more of the Hindutva politics that maybe wasn't so loud for the previous 4 years. There's, you know, temple politics, Ayodhya politics, Sabrimala politics, beef politics. There's so many different kinds of Hindutva politics that are forefront. As a politician in India's only Muslim-dominated state, where Muslim identity has become part of what's playing out on the ground, how do you handle this?
Look, I'll tell you, national parties, be it Congress, be it BJP, or bigger parties, they're sum of many parts. They are not a whole. They're not monolithic. They are sum of many parts. And one part, there is a part which you probably might create problems, but there are many other parts also.
But how do you deal it when your constituents come up and say, you know, Sajad Saab, you've allied with the BJP, but you know, there are things about the BJP we don't like as Kashmiri Muslims. In particular, we feel our identity, you know, is hurt by this.
Look, I allied with them before the assembly elections, and nobody asked me this question. But try to understand that the Kashmiris that you're talking of, they have so many problems of their own in the last 3 decades. I think the poor Kashmiris, that place is so problem-ridden. I don't think there is any space for any more problems which might be taking part in the rest of the country at the moment. Their own problems are bogging them down so bad. I don't think they are more, you know, any relief from the national parties would be a welcome.
Now, you said one of the things you like about Mr. Modi's Kashmir policy is that it's not preferential access to just the dynasties, there's politics beyond that. But there seems to be a very hardline Kashmir policy. That softness of Vajpayee Saab is missing. Would you urge the Prime Minister in his remaining tenure to show more gentleness, to show more softness? He's come and made the right statements, of course, saying, you know, gale lagayenge, goli se baat nahi chalegi. But in actual terms, you have all these very, very shrill primetime channels. Kashmiris are vilified. They're called anti-national for just having a different opinion. How are you going to handle this? Because somewhere, isn't there a collision of your bases, your base and the BJP's hardline base?
Look, I'll tell you, you know, one has to call a spade a spade. This Mehbooba ji also uses this word muscular policy, and Umar Abdullah also. I have seen much worse muscular times, and I've been at the receiving end of the muscular policy in the past. This is hypocrisy. I've seen interrogation during governor's rule earlier on. Incidentally, Mufti Saab was the Home Minister at that time.
In the 90s, you
In the 90s, yes. And then during Farooq Abdullah Saab's time, you know, he would you know, put Pota at the drop of a hat. We've seen much worse times. I still believe that there is a space for reaching out. There is a space that violence is weeded out. But I hope people don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that let us not be obsessed with a certain band which might have reservations about Mr. Modi and might describe something muscular, which is already muscular for the last 30 years. So that's very unfair, because I have seen much more muscular, super bodybuilding type policies in the last 30 years. What are we talking of now? If you look at the 90 to 2000 phase, it was worse.
But do you miss a Vajpayee touch? Do you miss a Vajpayee touch in the valley?
I personally don't, because you know, I haven't had the experience of in fact.
I mean, you said if he hadn't given you security, you would have been killed.
I am saying the first phone call I received after my father died was from the great man. And I remembered he telling me, "Kayarta nahi karna, reet ko tod do, aur sach bol do." I've been speaking truth all along, and he was the Prime Minister at that time. But what I'm trying to say is that Vajpayee ji also, towards the end of his tenure, you know, he got into the groove of Kashmir and other things, and I think even Mr. Modi is. Maybe it takes more time, the different circumstances, different times altogether. But I'm sure that somehow I have this belief, I could be wrong, but I have this firm belief that he's made to do something in Kashmir which no other Indian leader has.
And you think there's time? There are only 6-7 months to go. We don't know what's going to happen in 19.
I'm not an astrologer, but I can tell you it seems he will be there. And it seems if he's there, I'm sure he will do something. The main thing in a leader that you look at when you deal with Kashmir is the courage. And he has that audacious courage, which no Indian leader as on date has. Let's face it, in current times has. The audacity, the courage that he has, which no other leader at the moment has in India. So at least I personally am banking on that he's the one who could deliver. We have to convince him to deliver. There might be other leaders who would want to deliver, but don't have the courage. But I don't see any leader today who wants to deliver or has the courage.
Okay. I want you to talk in the end about the situation in Kashmir. A couple of years ago after Burhan Wani, you and I had an interview where you said that, look, it's the media overstates the people who are out on the streets. This is 5% of the population. Sajad, we are seeing, in my opinion, some terrible times in the valley today. You are seeing a resurgence of local militancy. You're seeing educated boys pick up the gun. You are seeing, whether my Kashmiri friends like me for saying this or not, a kind of radicalism, creeping in. Are you today willing to review what you said then and say that things on the ground are actually slipping?
Look, I again repeat that violence or strife is not majoritarian in nature.
You're saying the majority of Kashmiris are not represented?
I'm not talking of Kashmiris. I'm talking of violent elements.
Any violent element, anywhere.
Any violent elements, strife, it is started not by majority. Majoritarian to nahi hai na. Look, let us stop. This is one problem. We presume every Kashmiri is a political robot. He gets up in the morning and thinks, when will Kashmir issue be resolved? How will it be resolved? The reality is that 99%, the first thing they think about is breakfast. And then they think about to go out and earn some money for the lunch and for the dinner. The luxury of not worrying about lunch, dinner or breakfast is just 2 or 3%. The other majority has to search for it every single day on a daily basis. If not 90, maybe 80, maybe 70%. I wouldn't go below 70% who have to actually think of every single day, who have lesser resources, scarce resources for medicines, for education, for clothing, for food. So don't treat Kashmiri as somebody who is obsessed only with politics. Yes, there are people who have grievances, there are people who have aspirations, but then they are a part of what they are. Every human being, again, is a sum of many parts. He is a father, he is a brother, he is a mother, he is a son, he is a neighbor, he is a friend, and he also has political grievances or aspirations.
How much would you emphasize the importance of elections? I ask you this because, you have participated in the urban local polls, your party has done well, as I said, you have a mayor. What is the emphasis you'd place on elections?
Elections are very important. And
for administration or for political? You see, one of the big debates in Kashmir is, are elections about daily administration or are they about the political issue?
They are about daily administration, they are about development. We should not pretend and lie to people that the assembly has the power to change anything. In a democracy that we have, you can't do things on our own. You can't precipitate a crisis. Foreign policy, dialogue, other things, I think is in the domain of the foreign ministry. Why are we trying to pretend and lie to the people of Kashmir that we are convincing someone? We should basically be for development. Yes, grievances, reach out, be a bridge between Delhi and Kashmir in terms of things that are out of our hands, convey to them privately, and not make a mockery out of it by going political and ballistic every...
How would you answer or deal with the Azadi camps, the separatist camp, the Hurriyat of which you were once a member, where your brother Bilal is still a member? How would you deal with those who stand up and say, we stand for separatism, the Hurriyat or people on the street?
Well, in a democracy, anybody can say, I don't hold it against them. But my advice, unsolicited, would be to look at evolution, to look at introspection. And the very fact that a statement that they made in '89, if reprinted today, would look as fresh, talks about a static mind, talks about not being, there is adaptation and assimilation. They have to adapt and assimilate in a world which is dynamic, which is changing every single day.
Last question, Sajad. You've had many ups and downs in your life. As I said, you've seen your father killed, all your family members have different politics. What has been the toughest phase for you, and what scares you today as a Kashmiri politician?
I would say the toughest phase was the transition, because that was the most difficult one. And if you look at the trends all across the world, that once you are identified with the nationalist cause, the moment you make a shift, you sink. And I think even in our country, there have been very rare chances where people have been able to stay afloat. That was a very, very tough decision. And what scares me is when I see young children and when I see our people involved in debates on the social media. I don't know. If I look into a mirror, it's not me when I was young. It's somebody else. We become critical. We don't like the rise of our fellow comrades. And we've gone on to a trip, Alice in the Wonderland. We need to come out of the Wonderland. And we need to look at reality that is staring at us. And they are the economic challenges that our youngsters will face, the social challenges that they are going to face. But I'm very worried that, ideology is fine, but the day ideology becomes fashion, that is fashionable to be ideological, it's dangerous for any country. Dreams, fine. A dreamless existence is a worthless existence. But a delusional existence is as worthless, that they have to understand. And for even, cheerleading grief, being cheerleaders, for grief, for death, for destruction, as long as it's the neighbor's son and it's not our own son, that's something we need to look into and introspect, whether we're doing a duty to our people or it's something terribly wrong.
Sajad Lone, pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.